Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh and good morning, my MI student class. This is Dr. Rosmani again this morning lecturing on chapter 3 titling Using Information System to Achieve Competitive Advantage for Business or Organization. So this is basically chapter 3 of your Management Information System course that is stated in your lesson plan. So, prior beginning my lecture, I need to highlight to you a few learning objectives, 5 learning objectives that I'm supposed to enable you to understand by the end of this chapter lecture. First, I am supposed to be able to help you to identify and describe the important features of organization that managers need to know in order to plan, build, and use information systems so that it can help the company perform successfully. So in this course also, I need to demonstrate to you how the Porter's competitive forces. It is a business model by Michael Porter that is suggesting how companies can develop competitive advantage. A few strategic approach that company can use information system in order to help companies operate successfully. The third learning objective is that I need to assist you to be able to explain how the value chain and the value web model help businesses identify opportunities for business information system and its application. So in this course also, I need to help you to be able to demonstrate how information system help business use synergy, core competencies, and the network based on strategies to achieve a good competitive advantage. Last but not least, I'm supposed to be able to help you to assess what are the challenges posed by strategic information system and its management solution. Okay, so this is the diagram that is linking between the organization and information technology. So in many organizations nowadays, they engage many IT equipment, machine and devices such as the server, such as the network, such as the telecommunication broadband in order to manage the organization successfully. For example, the organization are managing emails for using IT for employees to use their IT system infrastructure. Nowadays, email communication is very common among many organizations. However, remember, it is about 15 or 20 years ago, you believe or not, that email were basically being used by the military or Ministry of Defense. 20 years ago, email is basically a luxury facility which is only available to general, lieutenant, uh, uh, those that in the top management of the army. So it is not like now. Email is basically publicly available. Some people might have 5 or 6 email account even nowadays. It is considered a public domain and it is considered general facility that normally people have. Right? In the Edmodo folder, you can have a look on the video clip. How does Google manage your email by through their Google data center? So you later may have a look on that video clip that I will be uploading it into Edmodo platform at the educational video clip. Okay, let's focus on how does information technology and company or organization influence each other. So basically, in organization, there are many components that making up the organization itself, be it is a company or be it is a university or be it is a multinational corporation. It must have a structure, the structure of the organization. It must have the business processes, how the company is processing their operation. the politics within the organization itself, the culture that build up the working environment within the company, and the decisions that the managers made. Okay, let's take a look on the basic organization of this company named Fujitsu, because in my lecture I would like to have direct example, because Fujitsu is next to our university, so it is easy to relate and it is easy to imagine. Okay, basically the question is, what is an organization? Organization basically consists of a two component, which is the technical perspective and also behavioral perspective, right? The technical definition of the organization is basically it is a formal structure, formal organization structure that link up people, reporting people to their superior. So this is what they call the formal structure, in which 3 or 4 engineers are reporting to their assistant manager of engineering, and assistant of manager engineering reporting to engineering manager. So those are the formal social structure. It is a way of people work and who is reporting to what, who are responsible to whom, right? It is partly a formal legal entity of the internal rules and procedure. It is basically a social structure. So the second definition of organization, they call it behavioral definition. So it is how do they manage the behavior of the employees, or the behaviors of the managers. It is basically a collection of rights, privilege, and obligation and responsibility that is balanced over a period of time in order to solve problems, solve daily conflict, and how the problem is getting resolved. Okay, here is the diagram that shows the interrelationship between the organization, right? And it is basically related to output, production process, and also input. So this is basically the technical perspective, the first definition that we discussed earlier. So in the technical perspective, it is basically it is based on the process, the working process, right? In this organization, it shows that the process requires input, for example, the man hours, for example, the capital, the know-how, the standard operation procedure, how to do the respective work, and this is input into the organization. So it is a processes into their work in progress, right? And like in the production process, from raw material converting into the work in progress, and later semi-finished good, later being reprocessed until it become finished good, and it will become the output, right, to the company. And this output shipped to customer give feedback, and the process is basically repeated on and on. So this is a technical perspective. It is very much based on the process itself within the organization. Okay, this is the second perspective of organization. They call it behavioral view. So behavioral view, basically, it is very much based on relationship between the managing director to the managers, relationship between managers to their engineers, subordinates, supervisors, and production worker. So it is basically human to human kind of relationship. So in the formal organization, there must be a structure in the form of the hierarchy in terms of the that organization structure, the division of labor between the human resource, purchasing, production, engineering, and also perhaps logistic. So those are division of labor. There are rules and procedures governing within the production, in which that after getting raw material from the logistic, so production will bring the raw material into the production floor and loading the raw material into the machinery by following the job schedule, and that job schedule is being produced or allocated to certain machines by the job order 1, job order 2, and job order 3, and upon finishing the semi-finished good, they will transfer to the next process. So those are basically the business processes. Within the processes itself, in the formal organization like Fujitsu, they have the rights and obligation. For example, the rights for the engineer is basically to give instruction to supervisor in order to proper setting of the machinery by using standard operation procedure. Those are the rights and obligation. So the obligation of the worker, for example, is basically to set the machine according to standard operation procedure given by the engineering department. For example, at what temperature, at what speed for the roller to rotate, at what kind of setting of color of the production that need to be produced. So those are the rights and obligation between supervisor, engineer towards and the worker. So as such, at the end of the formal organization, they're going to be the environmental output in the form of the output like the finished good, production report that later being brought to the meeting for discussion, and these are all the environmental resources input that needed for the formal organization to work in order to achieve environmental output. So it is basically a relationship between the managers, the engineers and supervisors, and also the workers. So these are the second perspective of the organization with respect to information system. Okay, back to our example, Fujitsu company. Fujitsu component next to our university, UTHM. It is producing basically relay, components of keyboard, and also thermal cartridge for printer. So features of the organization, they apply and use this hierarchical structure, right, from manager to engineer and later supervisor and operator, for example, in production floor, right? And this organization like Fujitsu, they also adhere to principle of efficiency. For example, they need to start work at 8 and finish at, say, 5. So those are the adherence to the efficiency. For those working hours, they need to produce perhaps 1,200 keyboard within single shift. So those are the principle of efficiency that Fujitsu must adhere with their own rules. Okay, within the organization itself, it has a routine and business process. Okay, what does routine means? For example, at Fujitsu, routines means that the task that you are repeatedly doing over and over from day to day. Those are the routines. In the manufacturing perspective, they call it SOP, Standard Operation Procedure. So it dictates the exact rules, procedure, and practices to cope with the work setting itself, right? So these business process is basically a collection of routine in order to work properly, in order to work the machine to work as expected. So this is what they call as a routine and business process. Okay, let's relate this routine or business process within a firm like Sime Darby Healthcare. It is a specialist hospital, right, in Subang Jaya. So it is treating patient. So of course, for hospital like some Sime Darby Medical Center, Subang Jaya, so they have the standard routine and business process. For example, so these are the patient or the outpatient, means that patient that had previously been treated by Sime Darby Medical Center, and this patient, perhaps after 6 months, they come back again to some Sime Darby Medical Center for a follow-up treatment. So this outpatient is considered individual routines. So first, the business process is that the outpatient need to register himself or herself. So get it registered, and then after getting registered, the next business process is take a blood sample. All right. Then after taking the blood sample, they will process with taking the urine sample, right? And after getting both result, the urine sample and the blood sample, after perhaps 30 minutes or 1 hour, so then the result is available to the doctor, and again, only then the outpatient can see a doctor for consultation. So business process 1, 2, 3, right, 4, and 5 is basically a standard business process, right? It must follow certain step in order to get the service completed. So those are basically the routines and business process within a firm. Okay, this is basically the next topic under organizational politics. Okay, so this is not a politic in the general term. Basically, it is within the politic of within the perspective of a company. Okay, so we do understand that people is made up of different background, different perspective, different experience, different expectation. As such, the politic perspective within the organization is that itself is basically people tend to work within their group in which that they are working comfortably. So that's all. It is a group of people working together so that the job can get done, right? So yes, there is a political resistance within the organization, which is, for example, competition between the groups and the other group. But that is normal among human perspective because we normally tend to work comfortably with the people who are getting along with us. So that is basic human nature, right? So because in the very narrow perspective, we could say that human is basically selfish or thinking of their self being first before others, right? So for example, in the queue, right? So in take a queue, so of course you would like to have you to get served first, but the basic arrangement of getting to get served first is first come first serve. So that is the organizational politic within the organization. Then now come the organizational culture. So what does it mean by this culture? So culture is basically encompassing the a set of assumptions that define goal and product, right? So what are the product that the organization should produce? For example, like Fujitsu just now, they must produce keyboard component, they must produce relay, they must produce the heat cartridge for the printer, right? So that is basically the culture is actually to produce those goods. So whatever work that comes towards that is basically confined, or all the energy and resources are focusing to produce that three finished goods. That is what happening in the Fujitsu company. Well, on top of that, we have the organizational environment, the environment that shapes the operation of the business, right? So the environment within Fujitsu and the industrial area in which it operates, the environment in which the Fujitsu component operates within the with the statutory body like Majlis Perbandaran Batu Pahat, with a statutory body or like a Ministry of Health, because now COVID-19, so organization like Fujitsu must comply to certain rules and regulation. For example, sanitizing, For example, using mask, for example, distance within operator to operator for about 1 meter. Those are how does company operate within their operating environment. In summary, the relation between environment and organization basically in a two-way kind of relationship, right? So organization and its environment, for example, this is our eyes as the company like Fujitsu, the firm. The firm produce product, for example, keyboard, all right, for example, relay for component of a notebook and so on. And of course, the firm also got management, got engineers, got workers, and so on. So these are how the Fujitsu see the environment, right? So Fujitsu sees the environment in terms of the resources. What are the constraint or difficulty, obstacle for resources to be supplied to the company? And how does Fujitsu sees the government as an entity to support their operation in terms of, for example, giving assistance as far as corporate tax, giving assistance as far as give them license to operate, right? So they have their competitors, right? Of course, Fujitsu have their own competitors in the form of perhaps other company who are operating within the same environment. For example, Sharp Roxy, which is down there in Batu Pahat town area, right? So they are competing in terms of, for example, resources, in terms of perhaps employees, right? Perhaps in terms of expertise and also many other things. So the firm Fujitsu see how do their customer provide good service or good, I would say, sales to them, right? So the firm also see the financial institution as far as giving them like financial support, as far as giving them loan in order to expand their factory. So the firm also see the culture of their people in working, for example, respecting each other, the culture of those three major races in Malaysia, Malays, Chinese, and Indian. They could cooperate with each other in order to execute the work and complete the product as per their intention. So within the firm also, it uses information system in order to manage their technology, manage their processes, manage their scheduling, perhaps by using ERP system and so on. So these are part and parcels how company sees their environment, the government service, the financial institution, and also the technology. However, we could say that technologies doesn't is not stagnant at one level all the time. From time to time, after you implement perhaps software like ERP, like Oracle 5, after a few years, it will be introduced with a new ERP system like Oracle 6. So of course, it is faster, it is more agile. So company like Fujitsu need to manage their IT technology in the environment of being disruptive, in which change will happen. So company must adjust, adapt, and perhaps embrace new technology. Okay. For example, disruptive in technology like in the search engine, right? In the current internet nowadays, one of the best searching engine is Google. Yeah, that could be in this new millennium. But 10 years ago or 15 years ago, actually, when Google it was not yet serving the market, there are other search engine like the name of Yahoo or Explorer. But believe it or not, the first search engine in the internet era is basically Netscape. Perhaps most of you never use this Netscape search engine in the 1990s. right? But nowadays it is dominantly, I would say, controlled by Google, and in which they use this mechanism of the page rank algorithm for their search engine. What is a page rank algorithm? Okay, page rank algorithm is a logical flow or mechanism in order to search for the information that customer wants. Okay, so Google use this algorithm in the form of ranking on which website contains the most information based on the search word or search phrase that the customer type. Okay, for example, you type at Google search engine Bukit Tinggi Pahang. Okay, so Bukit Tinggi Pahang, when you search, right, basically Bukit Tinggi Pahang, you could find the most available website that contains the information of Bukit Tinggi, in which other users have also searched that is ranked high. This is the first rank high that user already searched. This is the second Wikipedia, the second most hit that the other user have searched and found information about Bukit Tinggi Pahang and so on. So in such, when you search a certain phrase, right, page rank algorithm will search the website in which the visitors that have hit the most. For example, uh, tempat menarik website is 34.4%. That's why it is ranked first in their listing of found website. And then Wikipedia contains Bukit Tinggi Pahang is the second website that contain that content that customer have searched previously. And third one, perhaps booking and so on. So it is a way of IT search match with the requested information by the customer or by the user. Okay, so there are five basic kinds of organizational structure. Those organizations that basically use information system. First type of organization is called entrepreneurial. It's basically family based kind of company like Faiza. Second organizational structure, it is a machine bureaucracy. It is a bigger organization with a bigger network like the Sapura group. The third kind of organization, they call it a divisional bureaucracy. This is basically a multinational. It's even bigger or a large company, for example, like Nestle, because they operate internationally. Right? And the fourth kind of organized structure, they call it a professional bureaucracy. This is normally like a consultancy firm, like law firms, school system and hospital. For example, it is a law or legal firm company, right? Or the last one, the fifth basic kind of organized structure is basically adhocracy. For example, a consulting firm that consults within project to project. Okay, so let's take a look on this organizational structure impact on economy. Of course, those organizational structure basically use IT system, right? So IT system influence the cost and capital of managing the information, because information system technology also is one of the factor, just like production, just like the invested capital, and just like human resources. So one component of the factor is information system. As I had explained earlier, organization got layers, right? So the bigger the organization, the more layers it has. The smaller organization, basically, the less layer they have. in which now even bigger organization, they have a slightly flattened organization because of network, because of email, because of server, because of communication. You can send email directly from at your level to the CEO, and you could communicate easily. So as such, IT makes the organization slightly flattened. Rather than traditional, it's very hard to reach your boss. For example, this is the traditional hierarchy, like a big company like Ford. So if you are here, in those olden days, it's very hard to reach your senior manager or even CEO, right? Because of lesser IT influence. But nowadays, due to more IT influence in the form of network, communication, email, so you could easily send email from your layer up to the CEO. So as such, it is called that organization has relatively become flattened due to the IT infrastructure. So that is what it has been in nowadays modern internet era organization. Okay, so well, it is typical to understand that organization resist to change. Why organization resist to change? Okay, the question is, for example, if you want to introduce a new IT system, for example, new server, or for example, a new MRP system, why many organizations resist? Okay, basically people try to people like managers and workers, they try to minimize disorientation, they try to minimize change. They don't like to basically need to adjust into a new system because it gives them challenge, it gives them problem, and it gives them some sort of uncomfortable feeling. That is one reason why people change. However, as organization, from time to time, you got to have to change, perhaps in the form of new investment in information system, or new server or new software, right? In order to move on, in order to create competitive advantage in comparison from your company to the other company, right? That is a basic human being that we need to change. We need to adjust from time to time in order to suit the environment to become better, right? So, however, employees normally resist to change, but organization must adopt new changes. Okay, this is how IT relates between task or work and people, the human resource, the structure in which the organizational structure, how do the people are linked to each other, and the technology that they must engage in order to execute their work. So in other words, work need the people to employ technology within their organizational working culture. So this is how IT is related to the whole organization. Nowadays is basically the era of the internet, and the organization has no option except embracing the internet technology so that they can increase their accessibility for communication, or they could increase their sharing of information between like companies to companies, like Fujitsu Components Malaysia to Fujitsu headquarter in Takamisawa, Japan. So they need to have this internet access in order to distribute information and knowledge between organization. As far as the internet is concerned, basically the internet technology itself is a one form of IT technology. They have greatly lowered the cost of doing information sharing. All right, because when you send email from Malaysia to Japan, the cost is technically almost zero, or cost maybe technically 1 cent, right? And nowadays, many organizations have operated in the form of online. For example, online delivery, online purchase, online application, and so on. So I would say for the information system and organization, so they need to tally up their strategy in order they could synergistically use IT to better complement their business operation. Okay, this basically we are moving on. How do we take a look on the business model proposed by Professor Michael Porter of Harvard, and he proposes a model, business model called competitive forces model, or 5 competitive forces model. Okay, under this proposal, Michael Porter proposed there are 5 strong forces that shape the company with respect, in our discussion, with respect to IT information system. One, the company traditional competitor. Second, the new market entrance. Third, the substitute product and services of the company, right, produced by the company. The fourth, customers, and also the fifth, supplier. Okay, how does these 5 forces compete among each other within the firm, right, in the perspective of IT? Okay. For example, this is the diagram that is shown in your textbook, right? This is Porter's forces, competitive forces model. So it has 5 forces. One, new market entrant. Second, substitute product. Third, customers. Fourth, suppliers. And the fifth is basically the competition, competitive forces between you, the company, and its competitor. Okay, let's discuss this Porter's competitive forces model in the perspective of airline industry. Right. So the firm is here. I'm highlighting as a Malaysian airline. This is the firm, right, or the company. Of course, Malaysia Airline compete directly or indirectly with Thai Airways or Singapore Airlines. So those are their direct competitors, right? So within that, Malaysia Airline need to manage their IT infrastructure at least comparable or almost in equal level with what the Thai Airways have, right? If Thai Airways have that kind of service based on IT-driven check-in, for example, based on IT online booking, so Malaysia Airlines must have that kind of facility too, or else Malaysian Airlines will lag behind in terms of IT infrastructure offerings. Okay, the firm Malaysia Airlines basically has a direct kind of competition with the low-cost airline, for example, AirAsia. This is what they call substitute service because it could offer equally airline service at a lower price. This is what they call substitute product or service. So Malaysia Airlines also has to deal with that by using their IT system. So if AirAsia could use or leverage their IT system to a better or faster service in terms of faster server, then Malaysia Airlines also must enhance or improve their IT server to be faster, flexible in order to match the substitute service. Malaysia Airlines also, as a firm, they must also compete with the new market entrants, right? By using IT infrastructure, Malaysia Airlines could open up a new perhaps route to the North America destination, for example, to Los Angeles or to New York, so that they can enter a new market. So by that, Malaysia Airlines needs a good IT infrastructure in order to penetrate a new market too, right? So on top of that, Malaysia Airlines also needs a good relationship, supply relationship with the supplier. For example, the food caterer, for example, for the fuel supplied by Petronas and also Petron. So it also engage IT infrastructure in order to get the supply on time, get the supply bonded within, for example, the good pricing for 3 months, right? So get the supply on time, right, as far as delivery of fuel is concerned to their flight, right? So Malaysia Airlines definitely need to have a good relation with customer. right? They need to keep track their customer, retain their customer, and give customer a good offerings. Right? Malaysia Airlines can also promote retention program for customer, like their Enrich Club, right? And Enrich Club is basically a mechanism in order to retain Malaysia Airlines customer in the form of accumulation of points. So the more you use Malaysian Airlines, the more points you accumulate. So those are basically five Porter's competitive forces model that basically competing each other, pushing and pulling each other in order for them to survive, having good competitive edge in their business operation. Okay, this is what is being explained in that diagram. First, we have a traditional competitor. So traditional competitor is that all companies share market space with the other competitor. For example, Malaysia Airlines share about the same competitor with Thai Airlines and perhaps Singapore Airlines as a premium airline. They compete the same competitors or the same customer. Okay, as far as the second forces, the new market entrance, basically some industry or some country have high barrier to entry. For example, computer chip businesses. So in order to enter new market, normally you have to encounter new challenge, new barrier or new problem. So for example, for Malaysia Airlines to enter the North American market, perhaps they need to comply on a new set of regulation requiring the flight to be, for example, releasing lesser carbon footprint. For example, the airline should use a certain particular aeroplane which is efficient in fuel consumption, right? Those are some of the high barrier to entry, right? So in this case, Malaysia Airlines need to use perhaps new aeroplane in order to serve the new market that they intend to expand and explore for the new market potential. On top of that, Malaysia Airlines also has the substitute product and services, as I had explained earlier. There are substitute service for Malaysian Airlines, which is served by perhaps Malindo Air, perhaps by Firefly, or perhaps by Air Asia, for example. Okay, so the basically forces is customer. Customer, of course, they can easily switch to competitors' product. They can easily change from Malaysian Airline to perhaps Singapore Airline or the Emirates, right? Because there is no contractual bonding between them. Basically, customer chooses Malaysia Airline because of their preference or because of their simply their choice, right? So this is also basically influenced by IT, right? So the IT must be, I would say, fast enough, agile enough, user-friendly enough to be used, so that they can mentor or they can maintain or keep their customers within this Malaysian airline service. Last but not least, the suppliers. Malaysian Airlines must also maintain good relation with suppliers because, for example, like food catering, right? Food catering is one of the key component that serve the airline. So normally premium airline, they must serve food for their customers. So maintaining good relation with caterer like Brahim Food Caterings is key for good business operation. So they must have this kind of good supply chain network. Okay, we move on next to the four generic strategies of dealing with competitive forces that in the perspective of applying IT, right? So how does company can use IT in order to lower their costs? Okay, how company use IT in order to create product differentiation, right? how does company use IT in order to create niche or advantage or better offerings to their customers, and how does company use the IT in order to strengthen customer and supplier intimacy. Let's take a look on the IT that is being used by certain companies that is basically offering low cost leadership. Okay, basically let's take a look at Giant. Okay, their slogan is basically everyday low price. All right, because a customer will instantly persuaded by low price. Okay, all customer like low price offering. Right, of course, Giant could of course maintain this low cost leadership by using IT system in which they could order their products in bulk, right, in the large volume, and later they distribute within their networks, and later by having to order in the large volume, the unit cost or the cost that can be sold to customer per unit will be lowered down, and those need IT efficient system, those need IT fast processing in order to maintain this low cost leadership. Okay, second company that engage on the product differentiation in their offering is like Nike, right? So Nike try to differ their product in comparison to other sporting goods. All right. So they offer many varieties, right? They offer varieties in comparison to pricing, which is very attractive, right? They offer higher quality. They offer better performance. Their product is basically long lasting. So these are product differentiation offered by Nike, Apple, and Google. So this, in that way, they need IT infrastructure in order to execute how to differentiate their product in comparison to the other competitor products, right? Of course, Nike will be different in comparison to other brand like Puma or New Balance and so on, because of their offering. So they want to look different. Okay, how does IT can be used by companies in hospitality industry like Hilton Hotel in order to serve customer better service? For example, Hilton focus on niche market. All right, so niche market means that only certain segment of the customers that the Hilton hotel and resort serve. Right, Hilton normally serve niche market, particularly on the middle income to the higher income segment group of customers. So that is niche, right? Hilton Hotel has certain target of customers that they are serving. It's not for all, so it's not for lower segment. It is basically middle class and above. So that is what they call market niche. And Hilton does use good IT infrastructure system to maintain their booking, to maintain their offerings, to maintain their reservation, and so on. And IT system could be used to strengthen customer and supplier intimacy, of course. Okay, for example, if you purchase books at Amazon, normally you could get your book within 10 to 12 working days. For example, the book that you order is normally sent from the US, and the Amazon normally engage like the courier company, delivery company like FedEx, Federal Express, or UPS in order to send the book from US to Malaysia. So Amazon normally also offer the book which is relevant, or basically they once a while offer you or prompt you or promote you the book that is related to the previous book that you have ordered from Amazon. So that way Amazon could keep the strength and could keep the good close relationship between Amazon and you yourself as its customer. Okay, that is basically how does IT help companies in order to strengthen their business into their competitive model. And also now we are discussing about the value chain model. Okay, what does value chain model mean is that firms or companies acting like in a series of chain, right? From supplier A to manufacturer B, and then to retailer C, and then to customer D. So those are a series of activities that add value from for products and services, right? The supplier might send a raw material, and then that material, of course, maybe a lesser value. But when the manufacturer convert the raw material into becoming finished product, so that product has a higher value. So when it is sent to retailer add up another value, and also later sales to the product being sold to customer. So this is what they call value chain model. Okay, let's take a look on the value chain model by Proton. Okay, this is Proton car, right? Model Saga, right? One of their best-selling model nowadays that customer like to buy, right? So this is the Proton as a at the end product, which is the car itself. However, it has a value chain in order to produce this Saga model. Okay, so Proton might need 200 or 300 components or parts in order to produce one car. So how does Proton manage to assemble those 200 or to 300 components in order to produce one car? So of course, it starts with this primary activity, and this primary activity is normally is being managed, controlled by an ERP system, which is Enterprise Resource Planning System. And at each department of this primary activity at Proton, department for logistic, department of operation, like production, department of sales and marketing, right, department of service, right, department and outbound logistics. So all of these are basically they have a IT system in the form of like management information system or MI system in order to manage their raw material or product in the form of automated housing system, right? At the production, they have this computer control machining or assembly, right? At the sales and marketing, they have this computerized ordering system, right? At the service department, they have this equipment and spare part and maintenance. At this outbound, they have a computer system like automated shipment scheduling system. So all these could be integrated into a single ERP system like Oracle or SAP, right? From left to right, basically we are moving from the supplier. This is what they call tier 2 supplier, and then tier 2 supply to tier 1 supplier. And this supplier, for example, Toyo Tires supply tires to Proton, which is the assembling company itself. And Proton then subsequently distribute the finished product to distributors, like to their showrooms, to their agents, and then customer buy Proton Saga from distributors. So this is the value chain, which is from tier 2 suppliers up to customer, right? This makes up of a value chain model, right? Of course, this primary activity must be supported by this complementing activity. For example, production need to be complemented by administration and management as far as scheduling, communication email, job load, right? Production order, and also delivery order. Those are maintained by administration and management. And human resource, so they need to have a workforce in terms of workers, engineers, managers, senior managers, CEO, MD. Those are considered workforce, which is recruited by the human resource department. Okay, so they need also this IT technology department. For example, in the design engineering department, they need the CAD AutoCAD design system. So this is support activities to engineering, for example, right? So in order to assemble a car like Saga, in its a few hundreds components, so purchasing must order the these parts, right, which is necessary to assemble this single car. So it is called procurement. Procurement is basically purchasing the necessary part for delivery to production at the right time, at the right price, and the right quality level. This is what they call this the value chain model that is making up for business like Proton. Okay, so here we are moving basically from the left to right. So we could say we are moving from like supply chain management software up to ERP software, and then later we deliver to customer. We maintain our customer retention program with customer relationship management enterprise system, right? Okay, and nowadays it is not only on the physical relation for supply chain. We have also the value web, right? In the value web, in which all business processes are highly synchronized into a server, and it is being networked from supplier to producer and even to customer or to a company in retailing, for example. Okay, this is the value web for Proton, for example. So why it is called the value web rather than value chain? This is basically the value is basically connected within the network, within the internet, within the intranet, and the Ethernet externet connection. So in the value web, you have this basically the parent or the host company like Proton. Okay, Proton ERP system, supply chain management system are basically also interlinked with the strategic alliance partner firms. For example, some parts might be supplied from Geely, China, because due to common parts which is shared between Geely and Proton. And furthermore, Geely and Proton now is teaming up as their joint venture. So that kind of strategic alliance in terms of supply for those common and strategic part could be achieved. And by that, they could reduce the cost that total cost of a Proton car could be reduced at a certain level. The intranet system or computer system at Proton are also linked to supplier. Okay, for example, the tire manufacturer like Silverstone, Toyo, Sime Tires, and so on. So this supplier also have the intranet system, and Silverstone intranet system are interconnected or linked to Proton's intranet system, like in the form of perhaps ERP or in the supply chain management enterprise software. So as such, they can maintain their supply level, they can maintain I would say, stock level, so they can communicate almost automatically, right? Proton Malaysia also is linked into their subsidiary, for example, Proton Europe in UK, right? So Proton could export, could also comply to the requirement of Europe as far as entering market Europe is concerned, because they are more stringent as far as environmental protection. So this computer network at Europe is also linked into Proton computer network in Malaysia. Okay, last but not least, Proton IT infrastructure can also be linked to their suppliers. For example, HP are supplying hardware and software to Proton intranet. So indirectly, HP is linked system-wise, or the server or the ERP with the supplier in order to keep up with the maintenance, keep up with the, I would say, contract of supplies, or replenish a new system wherever needed. So these are all the value web in which link between Proton with Geely, Proton with Silverstone, Proton with its subsidiary in different continent of the globe, like in Europe, Proton with the supplier. So this is what they call it is a web of value, or value web. Okay, so nowadays, basically information system could significantly improve the overall performance of the company by using synergy. Synergy, it means is that a company are tying up or creating alliance with other company in which it could strengthen the operation of the parent company. Okay, for example, recently Google purchased, I think a few years ago, Google purchased YouTube. Why? Because YouTube got a vast of content, vast of, I would say, input, right? So it is needed by Google to create more attraction to their searching engine. So as such, Google purchased YouTube. Of perhaps a few years ago, Google also purchased one aerospace company. That company produced kind of drone or aeroplane by powered by solar, called Titan Aerospace. So why Google purchased Titan Aerospace, a solar flight company? So basically, in order to broaden the internet coverage to the whole world, right? So Google purchased that solar powered aerospace company in order to get remote area being connected by using this kind of solar powered plane. So you could take a look on the video clip on Google purchasing Titan Aerospace and why they do so, in order to have better understanding how Google try to help customers around the world in order to access internet anywhere, anytime, any part of the globe. Well, every company, I believe, have their own core competency, and it is also being assisted by, for example, the IT, like AMD. They have a core competency in producing microprocessor, right? It is a competitor to Intel, and Microsoft has their own core competency as far as producing software, in which helping people to share document, edit document, and also produce a better document as far as software is concerned. Okay, and all these are based on network. All right, nowadays the strength of your company is based on how big is your network. For example, Amazon becomes stronger and stronger because of their vast network. Right, Facebook also have their own followers. Right, Instagram, Twitter, these are all network economy. The bigger network you have, the bigger number people exist within your network or get connected, the stronger gonna be your business operation. Okay, so now basically this will boil down into an ecosystem strategic model in which it is all bounded, or it is all linked by an IT information system, right? For example, in this an ecosystem strategic model, like I'm explaining in the perspective of Fujitsu, our neighboring company at the university, Fujitsu Component, for example, right? This is industry one. They are manufacturers of many electronic, sub-electronic parts, right? Be it computer or printer. And of course, they have a good bonding with industry two, which is in plastic injection molding, SKP plastic in Batu Pahat. And of course, they need a transporter to transport their raw material, to transport their finished good to customers, to transport to the finished good to the port for export purposes. So they engage transporting company like Sumiso. And of course, Fujitsu internally, they use many machinery, sensor, device, and equipment. And some of them are made of Omron, so Omron supplier, perhaps PLC, programmable logic controller device, to Fujitsu machinery in order to control their process and movement. So all these are basically an ecosystem which is strategy, and Fujitsu could operate in a well performance manner for their business. Okay, as such, we must understand that business operation always need IT in order to achieve high performance. So in such a way, like engaging ERP software for production planning and control. So IT will help companies like Fujitsu to achieve better performance in their business objective. Okay, that is about all of my lecture presentation for chapter 3 for this MIS course. I hope it has benefited you in your understanding and better grasp of the material in this chapter. And I will adjourn here. Okay, I will stop here at this slide, and I would like to thank you for your time, participation, and follow through my lecture. By that, we end the